What's up, everybody? It's the Gamer back with another The Greatest Opinion. Now, normally I'll be following some sort of loose script for this video, but today we're going to kind of go off with just raw emotion, feeling, and rationale when it comes to this. So for those who don't know, Capcom recently announced another edition for Street Fighter V, Street Fighter V Champion Edition. And for those who are keeping count, yes, this is the second edition they've announced for the Street Fighter V franchise since they were released in 2016. Now, under normal circumstances, this wouldn't necessarily be a problem, but if you've been keeping track about how Capcom's been handling their games and franchises over the past few years, it's a bit of a cause for concern. But to give you some context, let's think about 2015-ish to now, right? During the late PS3 cycle, going to the PS4 cycle, Capcom has made more than its fair share of questionable releases with their franchises. All of the multiple editions of Street Fighter 4 and all of the DLC that was tacked onto that. Let's talk about how they've been handling the Resident Evil and how those spin-offs and how those games have been kind of hit or miss. You know, you talk about the Devil May Cry reboot, where, you know, Dante is this almost unrecognizable protagonist, right? And you just kind of see this like trickle effect of really bad or at least mediocre games from Capcom. Oh, can't forget Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, right? So you have these games where it's like, all right, Capcom is dropping the ball in their action adventure games, they're dropping their ball in their fighting games. They have these franchises that haven't had a good game in years, aka Mega Man, right? And the franchises that they do have that people are longtime fans of, they're continuing to put out like a subpar product, just kind of diluting their brand and honestly making people kind of question Capcom where there would have been no question before. So what ends up happening, right? Street Fighter V comes out, it's not the critical acclaim darling they were hoping for, right? They put out Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. That was just mired in a bunch of controversy and definitely wasn't the critical darling they were looking for, right? And you're just like, okay, as a consumer, am I watching, you know, the downfall of a once super reputable company? Right, but what ends up happening, let's just say late 2017, early 2018, Capcom, I guess, huddles up, has their little board meetings, and decides to really listen to what the fans of their franchises actually want. Right, so in the span of 2018 to 2019, we get Mega Man 11, which I haven't played, but I know people who are fans of that franchise, and they say it's great. It's in a great return to form for that gaming franchise. Then they put out Monster Hunter last year. That game gets great reviews. Everyone I know who's played it loves it. Then we get a Resident Evil 2 remake, which also gets great reviews. And they decided, you know what, we're not going to make a reboot sequel. We're going to make Devil May Cry 5, which also got really good reviews. So going into the last quarter of 2019, you're like, yo, Capcom, they've been really paying attention to what their fan base wants. They've really been delivering, especially on the action adventure front, with their games and the content that they're providing for the players. And for me, it's like, I love action adventure games, even though I haven't had a chance to play most of the things I just listed. But it's really refreshing to see that they're kind of giving them attention again. So it's like, all right, Capcom has been making great decision after great decision after great decision. What about your fighters, right? What about Street Fighter V? What about Marvel vs. Capcom? Forget the fact that they announced that you're not going to need to get multiple discs to play Street Fighter V on the first release, right? It's like, we're not going to have nearly as much additions as we did with Street Fighter 4. And it's like, well, clearly that wasn't true, because here we are 3 years later and there's already a second edition about to come out, which wasn't even announced as the final edition. So we might be getting a third Street Fighter V whatever edition, right? But that's neither here nor there. You get into Street Fighter V and it's like, all right, it's too early for Street Fighter 6. You know, we're winning on the action adventure front. Let's try to turn our attention back to our fighting games and really try to revitalize that franchise. You know, let's try to get Street Fighter back to the same level of love that Mortal Kombat has received, that a lot of these fighters have received over these past 2 years. Tekken, Soul Calibur, Samurai Showdown. These are all kind of age-old games that are really getting a breath of fresh air and a reinvigorated community. And there's no reason why Capcom shouldn't be able to capitalize on this resurgence and wave of fighting games. But they instead announced Champion Edition. And that's not to say that announcing Champion Edition is necessarily the problem itself. It's the content that we're getting in Champion Edition. Granted, it's just announced, right? So between now and, what was it, February? We might be getting such a massive amount of content that I'll be eating my words from this video in a few months. But here's the thing, I highly doubt it. Street Fighter V, or even the Street Fighter franchise as a whole, since Street Fighter 4, has been one of their most milked fighters. For some odd reason, Capcom seems to approach Street Fighter nowadays the way the Dead or Alive franchise is handled. It's like, rather than give you all the characters you might want, reoccurring characters you might want, we're instead gonna give you 1 or 2 characters you might want, or characters you might remember or haven't seen in a while, and instead we're just gonna throw on a bunch of costumes, right? Because that's what you really want as a consumer. You want more costumes for your fighting game. And it's like, okay, costumes are fine. Costumes are fine, nothing wrong with costumes, but come on, like, this is your chance, Capcom. This is your chance to reclaim some footing in the fighting game world. Granted, yes, Street Fighter is still played very competitively in all these markets, right? All the Evos, all these things, Street Fighter is still a staple in those kind of markets. But what happened to the appeal for the casuals? Like a casual like myself. I'm not sitting here learning frame inputs and input commands for these characters. I just want to go in, pick up a franchise that I've been playing since I was a kid and play as my favorite character. And you're telling me that you're announcing a new edition with only 2 additional new characters, one of which is a character that I personally don't care about. And you're gonna tell me that, yes, this is the latest and most up-to-date give us your money edition of Street Fighter? This is the thing that you think is gonna make people be like, you know what? I was on the fence about Street Fighter V for the past 3 years, but this Champion Edition looks fire. No, this Champion Edition looks like trash. It looks like a cash-in. When you compare it to Ultra Street Fighter 4, granted that was like the 3rd edition in that game, but you got so much content. There was enough new material introduced to warrant picking up Ultra Street Fighter 4 if you hadn't picked up any of the previous versions at this point. What is it about Champion Edition that's like, hey, if you're a casual or a hardcore fan, this is the Street Fighter you want to play to stay up to date with Street Fighter. This is the one that has all the characters and all the modes and all the extra supers that you would want in a Street Fighter game. We still don't even have the same amount of content in Street Fighter V that we did in Street Fighter 4. 3 years later, Street Fighter 4, each character had like 2 ultra moves, a super move. They like added a mode where you can kind of like play these super broken versions of your character and like local play just to have fun. Street Fighter 5, what have we seen? We've seen a bunch of new characters that have had mixed receptions, to say the least, right? And you have these characters where it's like, what about this game makes me want to play Street Fighter over Mortal Kombat, over Dragon Ball Fighters? I'm not seeing it. And it's like, if this is how they're gonna handle Street Fighter, I can only imagine what they're gonna do in Marvel vs. Capcom. And it's like, yo, it's Capcom. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you see Capcom Presents, that alone should be, those 2 words alone should be the thing that makes you like, yo, I can't wait to see what they cooked up this time. You know, like, even though I wasn't like the biggest fan of how they handled Marvel vs. Capcom 3, I still appreciated the roster. I still appreciated the things that they were willing to try and things that they were willing to do with the game in terms of the gameplay modes and all those things. And I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing the same creative energy that they used to revitalize their action adventure genre, which is like been killing these past years. I haven't seen that with their fighters. I haven't seen, again, like those moments where it's like, we've been listening to what you guys want, and we have something that's gonna appeal both to the casuals and the hardcore fans, right? You look at Fighters, you look at Tekken, you look at Soul Calibur. Like, granted, Soul Calibur is doing a soft reboot of sorts, and they're still bringing in fan favorites that characters love. Tekken 7 has had one of the greatest seasonal runs that I've ever seen in a modern day fighting game. They just keep putting in stuff that people really, really want. And it's like, yo, Capcom, copy them. You know what I'm saying? Like, copy them. Do similar things. Put out similar content. Put out things that's gonna make somebody like me, who really appreciates the characters and the presentation and the graphics and the world, and get me invested in the fighting game. I'm not sitting there going to go play ranked to try to get better with like this one new character who has been play tested by a bunch of professional fighters. Leave that for them. Try to get your casual fan base back. Try to get the pick up and play players back. You know, like I just, again, like for me, I'm like, I just get so frustrated because like I want to see Street Fighter and especially Marvel vs. Capcom do well again. And there's no reason why they shouldn't. Ryu, Ken, all those characters are some of the most recognizable characters in video game history. You know what I'm saying? Like I just don't, I don't know, like, but that's just my thoughts on the Champion Edition announcement. What do y'all think? Do you think this is a step in the right direction for Capcom revitalizing their fighting genre, or do you feel like this is yet another misstep, and at this point you're just waiting to see what they do with the next action-adventure genre that they plan on rebooting? All right, let me know. Leave me a comment, subscribe, all that good stuff.